Canada, how y'all doing? Did you guys have a good weekend? Before we get things kicked off, I'd like to give a shout out to my man, Mr. Pickles. You keep sending me great videos, bud. People like what you're sending me, and I think we're doing a decent job at releasing those. Anyhow, the boys and girls are back in town, and after a week off, my goodness, what a great career, what a great life these politicians have. Like, they work less than the teachers, it would seem. Anyhow, we're going to drop into a couple of videos here, guys, just to get things kicked off. And
what kind of country do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a country where you can tell the size of someone's paycheck by their smile? Do you want to live in a country where kids go to school hungry? Do you want to live in a country where the only young Canadians who can buy their own homes are those with parents who can help with the down payment?
That is life in Canada today. So do we want to live in that country? No, we don't want to live into that country. And after 8 years of rising costs, rising crime, and rising chaos, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost, and we will replace him with a common sense conservative government that
Are they going to change things up, guys? We'll see. After this, we'll do.
Do you ever feel like everything's broken in Canada? I mean, here we are. Most beautiful place in the world, beautiful British Columbia, the Pacific, the Vancouver skyline, and another tent city. In that tent city are people hopelessly addicted to drugs, putting poisons in their bodies. They've probably lost their homes, their families. They've lost control of their lives, and they might lose their lives altogether. Just today we learned that British Columbia is on track to have over 2,000 drug overdose deaths this year alone. That is a 300% increase from 2015 when Justin Trudeau took office. These are Canadian citizens who are losing their lives. They could be your sister, your brother, your daughter, your son. They could even be your parents. This can happen to anyone. Many people got hooked on these drugs by taking them first as medications and then increasing their dosage and eventually becoming outright addicts. It's not just crack cocaine and methamphetamines, but it's opioids that are in the same family of drugs that are often prescribed or overprescribed. But the addictions that we see that have terrorized these people and our communities, they are the result of a failed experiment. This is a deliberate policy by woke, Liberal, and NDP governments to provide taxpayer-funded drugs, flood our streets with easy access to these poisons. This has been tried, not just in Vancouver, but in places like Los Angeles, Portland, Seattle, San Francisco, and always with the same results. Major increases in overdoses and a massive increase in crime. Here in Canada, under Justin Trudeau, we've not only had this 300% increase in overdose deaths in British Columbia, but across Canada, violent crime has increased by 32%. We should have expected this because every time this experiment has been tried, it has resulted in exactly the same outcome. But there are solutions. We know what works. First and foremost, we need to put the resources into bolstering our borders to keep the precursor ingredients that go into making these drugs out of the country. Second, we need to bring in tougher laws for the violent reoffenders and the gangsters and organized criminals who are preying upon these addicts. Look, I believe, like anyone, that a young person who makes a mistake should get a second chance, but we're not talking about that here. We're talking about hardened, repeat, violent offenders or organized criminals that are devoted to a life of crime and preying on innocent victims. And finally, and most importantly, we need to stop using tax dollars to fund dangerous drugs under the so-called and ironically named idea of safe supply. There is no safe supply of these drugs. They are deadly, they are lethal, and they are relentlessly addictive, giving people more of these drugs will not free them from their addiction. It will only lead to their ultimate death, as we have seen over the last several years that it has been tried here in Vancouver. Instead, we should put that money into recovery and treatment, detox programs that bring the addict into a facility, help them remove the poisons from their bodies, give them counseling, and help them fix the problems, the underlying psychological problems that got them addicted in the first place. This treatment has been proven to work. In Alberta today, they've managed to cut overdose deaths by almost half by getting people into recovery. It's possible. There is hope to give people back control of their lives. That should be our purpose. This has failed, but there is hope that we can turn these cities around and save the lives of our fellow citizens. Let's put them back in control of their lives here in Canada. Like I said, it feels like everything's broken in Canada. The good news is we're going to fix it.
Come on, Pierre. There we go. Let's gonna fix it. What a heartbreaker that is, guys. Sorry to make it kind of sad here in the beginning, but now we're going to take a couple of minutes. This is a new piece. I'm trying to design a formula that works for everybody, because I do like saying hello to everybody, but I can't do that the entire show. So now we're going to pause here and say hello to Guerrilla Radio. Welcome to the channel. I'm going to miss you in the typing in the chat, but welcome. We saw somebody else, JP Onies. Welcome to the channel. Good to see you. Always Too Slow, Patty, Kirk, Clint. Who else do we have here today? Teflon Anon, what's up? How are you? What's up, Raz? Good day, sir. Dana Linz, Random Zero, good to see you. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of people here. Is there no volume? There must be some volume. Sorry guys. Don't mean to get distracted. Let's double check and see what we're hearing here. So, up. Yeah, I think we're okay for volume, guys. I'm not sure. Hey, Jason, what's up? How are you? We're gonna we've got a couple of more pieces, and then we should be ready to jump straight into question period. Hey, Anna Marie, what is up? How are you? My man, Brent, almost missed you. Good day, sir. Pickles, always, man. I owe you. We're buddies. It's cool. You know, you're a bit of a jackass, but that's all right. We don't mind those around here. Takes one to know one. Hello, Joan. What is going on? Good to see you. Hanging out. Hey, Lavender. What is going on? Yeah. I think we're good. Hopefully we caught everybody. I would feel terrible if I'm missing somebody, but that's the risk you take when you say hello to anyone, is missing somebody else. That is it. And we're going to jump into some more videos here, guys. A couple more. I've got, these aren't quite as much.
Values are Canadian values. Truth,
hey, Sylvia,
justice, openness, compassion, service, human rights. These are the values at the heart of Sikhism. These are the values at the heart of Sikh Canadian communities, but they're also values at the heart of all Canadians. Happy Vaisakhi. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Waheguru ji ka khalsa, Waheguru ji ki fateh.
Is and should be seen as one of those places that if you're buying something that was made in Canada or created in Canada or invented in Canada or whatever, anywhere in the world you should be able to say, okay, if there's a maple leaf on it, if it was made in Canada, I know that it was done well, that it paid well the workers, it's environmentally responsible, it's probably done in partnership with Indigenous peoples, or at least in respect. Like, that's a brand that as people around the world, customers and consumers around the world are looking at, okay, I want to be reliable in what I'm buying, I want to be thoughtful about what I'm doing. People should feel that if you're buying something in Canada, that's a niche we should own, that is a good brand that people are comfortable, like buying Italian shoes or Japanese electronics. Whatever you buy from Canada, it should be, okay, yeah, no, this is going to be good quality.
I see that
We're going to take a pause here, guys, and see if what we can find here for question period, because it should be about ready to go. And we're off.
Hit that pose, take that flick, check your angle, post that.
We've got to watch or listen to an ad, I guess. We'll be right to question period, guys. We're right there, I swear. I've got to figure that part out. Here we go. These are the opening statements, or the statements that they make before question period kicks off.
And family.
All the way
he told
up.
his younger brother
All right,
to organize
here
a
we go.
farewell party the morning of his departure.
Hey, John Bad Coins,
He wanted
what's up,
no
sir?
tears or
Someone,
unhappiness,
good to
just
see you.
family members celebrating the excellent
Sylvia,
years he
what's up,
enjoyed
my
so
man?
much. And he wanted to participate in his own celebration of life. April is Parkinson's Awareness Month. Life with Parkinson's is going to look different for everyone, and it's changing over time. To all those affected by PD, including people living with the disease, their care partners, medical teams, and others,
What's up,
we are
Jack?
here
How are
fighting
you?
alongside you for better supports and services. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Chatham-Kent, Leamington.
Mr. Speaker, this past week I attended the Canadian Produce Marketing Association annual meeting and trade show in Vancouver. The fruit and vegetable industry gathered to engage in effective ways they can continue to feed the nation and supply Canadians with healthy, nutritious food for their families. I was proud to see the number and both the quality and quantity of exhibitors from Chatham-Kent, Leamington front and center at the show.
Hey, Cryptomaria,
But
what's
I also
up? How are
heard
you?
about the severe challenges the industry is facing, how the Prime Minister's carbon tax is resulting in higher food costs, the profound ramifications of the Liberal plastics ban, how it will decrease both our access to fresh produce and will increase the cost and the amount of food waste. Every person I spoke to was adamant that Canadians want an election, a new government.
Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, when will the Prime Minister step down, axe the tax, scrap the plastics ban, and allow Conservatives to restore common sense to this country?
The honourable member from Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, for 15 billion taxpayer dollars, you would think Canada would get supply chains for batteries, some vehicles, maybe even some jobs, but not in Windsor at Stellantis, where we are assembling batteries. The battery material comes from China, the cars are manufactured in Alabama, and the jobs come from overseas. Of the 2,500 jobs promised in Stellantis, more than 900 have been reported to be foreign jobs. And now the union, CBRU to Stellantis, is still hiring foreign workers for jobs promised to Canadians. Stellantis are even asking their Canadian suppliers to sponsor foreign workers and refugees perform the work when there are more than 180 Canadian iron workers and millwrights sitting at home unemployed. Canadians deserve a government that will stand up for Canadian workers. Only common sense Conservatives will ensure Canadian tax dollars are used wisely, that any taxpayer-funded job is given to Canadians, not foreign
What's up,
replacement
Keith? How you
workers.
doing?
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister must release all EV battery contracts. It's time to show taxpayers how much we are paying for foreign replacement jobs.
The honourable member for Avalon.
Speaker, I rise today to recognise a constituent in my riding who has single-handedly done more for his community than any person that I know. Heber Best of Kelligrews, Conception Bay South, has been a volunteer for more than half a century, volunteering with organisations such as the Red Cross, CNIB and local Lions Club, a group he was instrumental in introducing to our town 53 years ago.
Whoa.
He successfully secured funding for a local skating rink, indoor swimming pool, upgrades to the local soccer field and construction of affordable housing units for seniors, as well as the introduction of an annual youth public speaking contest. Over the years, Mr. Best has been presented with several awards, including the Newfoundland Labrador Volunteer Medal, the Lion of the Year, the Judge Brian Stevenson Fellowship Award, and the Melvin Jones Fellow Award. His contribution to our community and our province should stand as a symbol of what selflessness is, and we should all aspire to model our own lives by his example. I invite all members to join me in applauding Mr. Best for his outstanding generosity and caring spirit.
Hear, hear. The honourable member from New Westminster, Burnaby.
This week is World Immunization Week. Vaccines are crucial tools in safeguarding communities worldwide, preventing up to 5 million deaths every year from diseases such as tetanus and influenza. Vaccination campaigns have allowed us to eradicate smallpox, defeat polio, and decrease child death by over 50%. Yet challenges remain. Declining vaccination rates have brought back deadly diseases, resulting in ongoing outbreaks. Globally, 1 in 5 children are under-vaccinated or not vaccinated at all, jeopardizing their lives and futures. This week, we shout out to organizations such as the World Health Organization
so much.
and
That's
others,
amazing.
which play a vital role in making vaccinations accessible for regions all over the globe. Strengthening healthcare systems and empowering local communities are essential steps. So is pushing back against vaccine misinformation. Let's promote vaccine production and distribution. In this World Immunization Week, let's ensure that we reach every child with life-saving vaccines.
L'honorable député de Montarville.
The honourable member for Montarville. Mr. Speaker, it's with a heavy heart that I pay my last respects to Mr. Donald Scott, better known as Mr. Bonbon. A true legend in Saint-Hubert, Monsieur Bonbon spread happiness all around him. This exceptional man spread joy by standing on the edge of Chemin de Chambly, rain or shine, greeting passers-by and motorists with sweets. After a heart attack deprived him of the use of his legs, he didn't give up. He overcame his disability by devoting himself to others, including raising funds to help people living in his area. During the pandemic, there was great concern when it came to light that he had caught COVID. True fighter that he was, he overcame the virus and resumed his seat in his wheelchair, decked out in the colors of the Quebec flag, in order to continue greeting people. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois and myself, I extend my deepest condolences to his family and friends. Farewell, Monsieur Bonbon, and thank you for everything.
The honourable member from Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, this very week, exactly a year ago, I brought up open drug use in parks and playgrounds, how our communities were less safe, and how there were serious safety concerns, with law enforcement saying they were being handcuffed. And yet, the Liberal and NDP MPs clapped vigorously to support their drug policies. In BC, there's more people dying, more diversion of government drugs, and more unsafe drug paraphernalia littering our neighbourhoods, more challenges for our law enforcement. The BC NDP government finally acknowledged their failed drug experiment and just announced massive changes, asking the Prime Minister to reverse his drug policies. After 9 years, the Prime Minister's extremist policies allowed for deadly hard drugs to be used in public spaces like parks, coffee shops, beaches, and hospitals. This NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder. Conservatives will ban hard drugs, stop taxpayer-funded drugs, and put money into detox and recovery.
The honourable member from Don Valley West.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital on its 125th anniversary. For 125 years, Holland Bloorview has provided care to children and youth with open doors and open arms. Its mission is global, its approach is local, helping one child and one family at a time until kids with disabilities are fully included in the social, cultural, and economic life of our city, our province, and our country. Holland Bloorview is a world leader in research, education, and healthcare. With groundbreaking research on concussions, prosthetics, autism, cerebral palsy, and more, done at its campus on Kilgore Road with partners around the world, as well as its compassionate care and love for young people,
I'm not sure when the vote on
is
the
a
budget
true
is. I
centre
think
of
it's
excellence
this week.
that never veers from its mission, providing world-class care to children and youth with disabilities and challenges. Congratulations to the staff, administration, and volunteers at Holland Bloorview. Happy birthday.
Oral questions.
There we go. We're kicking it off. Look, there's Pierre in the batter's
The
box.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Let's get her going.
There's been tragic data today, Mr. Speaker. 25% of Quebecers are living below the poverty line.
Get some
that
likes
is
going,
below a good average life. And this is a direct result of the centralizing, bureaucratic, unnecessary spending of this Prime Minister. and his spending is 100% supported by the Bloc Québécois. Mr. Speaker, when will the Prime Minister and the Bloc Québécois stop impoverishing Quebecers? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Oh, Lord.
Mr. Speaker.
So no Trudeau, but we get this.
2 weeks ago,
bag
we
of worms.
unveiled our budget. Our budget seeks to ensure fairness for all generations and for all Quebecers. Currently, a carpenter and a nurse pay taxes at a marginal tax rate that is higher than that paid by big business. That's not fair. Yet the Conservative leader opposes our plan for fairness. The only thing these Conservatives want is austerity. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Queen is right.
After 9 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. He's not worth the cost for Quebecers. Quebecers are paying double for rent, for housing, and to service the national debt. This Prime Minister is a big spender. He is spending $54.1 billion on debt services charges instead of on health. What's worse, the Bloc Québécois voted in favor of this Prime Minister's spending. They support $500 billion in spending. Once again, when will this Prime Minister stop making Quebecers
How are
poorer?
you guys?
The Honourable Deputy
Did
Prime
I catch
Minister
you,
and Minister of
True Blue?
Finance.
What's up?
Mr. Speaker, here's the reality. What we just heard is untrue. Here's the truth. Canada has a AAA credit rating.
Here it is, guys. The
Canada
same old
has the
spiel.
lowest debt and the lowest deficit of all G7 countries. The Conservatives are against our plan because the only thing they're in favor of is austerity, and they also support their very wealthy friends.
Leader of the Opposition.
After 9 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the drugs, disorder, death, and destruction. In May of 2022, he granted the BC NDP government's request for a criminal code exemption to allow crack, meth, heroin, and fentanyl use in parks, coffee shops, hospitals, beaches. Overdose deaths since exploded to a record-smashing 2,500 lost lives. The BC NDP government has reversed course and asked the federal government to recriminalize some hard drugs. Why won't this Prime Minister recriminalize these deadly drugs?
Hey, Blue, what's up? How are you today?
The Honourable Minister for Mental Health and Addictions.
Richard, good day, sir.
Mr. Speaker,
Sachs.
on this side of the
Come
House,
on.
we answered the call of the BC
Sack is
government when
something.
they requested the exemption on decriminalization of personal possession of certain illicit drugs. Mr. Speaker, what is driving this overdose crisis is the illegal drug supply. Every life lost is a tragedy. I met with Minister Whiteside this past Friday. We are reviewing their exemption request. Mr. Speaker, we have a clear lens on public health and public safety because we have a plan. They do not.
Is that a nose ring?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
She's wasting time while people are dying. In the year after this radical Prime Minister granted the decriminalization of crack, heroin, and other hard drugs in parks and hospitals, 2,500 people died. The overdose death in the 9 years of this Prime Minister have tripled to the fastest rising of the 11 countries studied by the Commonwealth Fund. Nurses are afraid to go to work because they have to put up with addicts using meth, crack, and weapons in their hospital room. Even nurses are having to give up on breastfeeding because they're worried their kids will be contaminated with the drugs they breathed in. What the hell are they thinking over there?
The honourable member, as a longtime member of this House, I'll just ask him to withdraw the
Come on.
offensive
Sit down,
word,
Greg
because
Fergus.
it is not
Tell him,
parliamentary.
Patty, to sit down.
I withdraw because they're not thinking over there.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Here we go.
Mr.
McKinnon's
Speaker,
a
last week we
greaseball.
saw the Leader of the Opposition once again encourage supporters of white supremacy, anarchy, and misogyny.
Listen to this. They're so
This has been a
woke.
regular occurrence. He draws the admiration of people who dismiss the slaughter of children in our schools. The Leader of the
going to be one of those Mondays, guys. Oh, look, he pressed his button. Mr. Speaker likes playing with his own button. Now, how long is he going to delay like this? Oh my goodness gracious, guys. What is he doing? Am I going to have to play another video while he stalls? I find him very frustrating because,
I'm going to invite the government House
nobody
leader
likes dead air.
to start from the top and to choose his words very carefully so that they do not cause disorder in the House.
Mr. Speaker, last week we saw the Leader of the Opposition once again visit with supporters of white supremacy, anarchy, misogyny.
They're so woke.
This has been a regular occurrence. He draws the admiration of people who dismiss the slaughter of children in schools. The Leader of the Opposition now has 30 seconds to speak to this House and to Canadians once I sit down. I ask him to clearly disavow the views of these dangerous people. Will he do that?
That is an
Order.
Oh, listen to them going off, man. This is a fun one.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I unequivocally disavow the guy who spent the first half of his adult life as a practicing racist, dressing up in blackface.
Here we go. It's on.
He's accepted the support of Hamas, and now he's brought on the extremist and radical position of allowing legal drug use in playgrounds, in hospitals, in coffee shops that has led to the mass death of our people. Will he not refuse the demand of Toronto to replicate the decriminalization nightmare?
Dirty Steve for sure.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sad to say the Leader of the Conservatives, the Opposition, has shown us his true colors. He speaks without conviction and clarity on a question that should be very, very, very simple for him to address. His silence speaks volumes. This is not leadership, Mr. Speaker. This is political cowardice.
They're so woke, everybody. Don't be as... Oh man, this cabinet, guys, is a mess. Ooh, it is a lot.
Order. The
Honourable Member for La Prairie.
All right.
When the Prime Minister unveiled his budget, or rather his plan to invade Quebec's areas of jurisdiction, he justified it by saying, citizens don't care which level of government is responsible for what. Well, a Léger poll found that 82% of Quebecers think that the federal government should respect the division of powers. This is more proof that the Prime Minister is completely out of touch with reality. Quebecers are clear that what they want is for the federal government to work with other governments. Instead of playing politics, why doesn't the Prime Minister give Quebecers the money that they deserve? That is what Quebecers want. The Honourable Minister of Transportation. Mr. Speaker, in the budget, we are investing in housing. The Conservatives and the Bloc are complaining. They're going to vote against it. In our budget, we are investing in dental care. The Conservatives and the Bloc complain and will vote against it. Mr. Speaker, the bottom line is that these two parties will find different excuses to vote against this one budget. And if we were to listen to them, to either of them, then at the end of the day, Quebec would end up with nothing. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Quebecers are not the only ones who are against interference. All the provincial and territorial premiers have added their signatures to those of the Prime Minister Premier of Quebec in a letter calling on Ottawa to respect our areas of jurisdiction, such as health, education, and housing. They are all calling for the right to opt out with full financial compensation from any federal intrusion outside its areas of jurisdiction. Everyone is opposed to federal interference from coast to coast to coast. When you think, as the Prime Minister does, that everyone else is wrong, maybe it's because you're the one who is looking for a fight. What does the Prime Minister have to say about that? The Honourable Minister of Transportation. Well, Mr. Speaker, seeking to pick a fight, well, the Bloc Québécois are the true experts. In fact, they have a PhD in picking fights, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc is voting against our budget. They say it's important to help seniors, but they're voting against the budget. The Bloc says that we need to help Canadians, but they vote against the budget. They're complaining. They keep complaining. But they don't actually do anything. It's all talk, no action from the Bloc Québécois.
The Honourable Member from Burnaby South.
This government stood by while food prices and rent skyrocketed. This hurts people living with disabilities disproportionately. After making folks wait more than 3 years, they announced a disability benefit that's too little, doesn't cover enough people, and is going to be clawed back by provinces. People struggling to put food on their table have been given crumbs by this government. When will the Prime Minister get serious about helping people living with disabilities?
What's up, one critic? How are you?
Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Hello, Yvonne.
Mr. Speaker, we are glad to be the first government, the first federal government in Canadian history to put forward the financing for support for people with disabilities across our country. That is a milestone. It is a very big deal. Mr. Speaker, this is just the first step. We recognize there is more to do, including working carefully with provinces and territories, and we're going to do it.
Is that the same red dress she wears every time, or does she have a cup?
Member for Burnaby South.
Gross.
This Liberal government is failing people living with disabilities. Les groupes luttons.
Advocates for those living with disabilities are clear. The announcement of the disability benefit is just not enough. It's not working. $200, that's not enough. The Prime Minister has thousands, billions even, to give to big oil, but pennies for Canadians living with disabilities. Will he sit down with disability advocate groups and fix this problem? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Freeland again. Goodness.
Mr. Speaker.
I find that dress
our government
just
is
gross.
proud. We are proud to be the first federal government to come forward with a disability benefit for those living with disabilities. This is a major step forward, and we are proud of our accomplishment. We understand that now we need to work closely with provinces and territories. This is just the beginning. We need to do more, and we will do more. Thank you.
Member from South Surrey, White Rock.
Crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder. That's what we have after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government. The extremist policies of this Prime Minister have forced parents in British Columbia to protect their kids from used needles at the playground. Open in-your-face drug use in Tim Hortons, on the SkyTrain, even in our hospitals. The Prime Minister's negligence is killing our citizens. When will he admit that his radical decriminalization experiment has failed and end it?
What's up, Justice Warrior, Freedom Fighter? How are you?
For Mental Health and Addictions.
Mr. Speaker, too many Canadians are dying every day from an ever-changing illegal toxic drug supply. The opposition leader and members of the Conservative Party are a big talk about investing in treatment, but Conservatives cut 2/3 of the drug treatment fund when they were last in government. Let's talk about what saves lives, Mr. Speaker. Safe consumption sites, accessible social and healthcare services, prevention, treatment, and harm reduction. They have no plan, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we continue to work to save lives.
Saving lives, are they? They should see all the tent cities here in Halifax.
South Surrey, White Rock.
Well, let's talk through a clear lens, Mr. Speaker. 40,000. That is the number of Canadians that have died from drug overdoses since 2015. Entirely preventable. Last year, BC set a record with over 2,500, and they want to talk about saving lives and compassion. Premier Eby and this Prime Minister have failed British Columbians, and now he's taking his deadly experiment to Toronto. Until this extremist drug policy is dismantled, people will keep dying. Will he prioritize recovery and stop killing Canadians with his radical ideology?
The Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Addictions.
Mr. Speaker, the opposition don't want to talk about the plans or the tools that are needed to save lives because they don't have a plan. All they offer Canadians are slogans and fear. Slogans are not an evidence-based strategy, Mr. Speaker. They are just words. We have a full suite of measures that address this crisis because it's a public health crisis, Mr. Speaker. It is not a criminal issue. We continue to work with BC on the exemption that they requested with a clear lens of public health and public safety.
Good job, yeah.
The Honourable Member from Fort McMurray, Cold Lake.
Mr. Speaker, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder. After 9 years of the Prime Minister's extremist policies, public drug use has become the norm. The Prime Minister has made it legal in British Columbia to smoke meth on the beach beside a family or smoke crack in a hospital beside healthcare workers. In fact, a nurse in British Columbia stopped breastfeeding her twin girls early at 13 months because being exposed to illicit drugs in the hallway. When will the NDP Liberals realize that time is up and end the decriminalization today?
The Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Addictions.
Mr. Speaker, every life lost in the illegal toxic drug supply, every overdose, every family that loses a loved one is a tragedy. Mr. Speaker, our focus, working with the BC government on their exemption request, is about saving lives, about providing health care. Harm reduction is health care, Mr. Speaker. Treatment is health care, Mr. Speaker. Prevention is health care, Mr. Speaker. Enforcement is also part of the plan. We continue to work with law enforcement in the provinces. They continue to divide.
I'm going to ask the member from Northern Rockies to please make sure that he only takes a microphone when he is recognized. The Honourable Member from Fort McMurray, Cold Lake. Zimmer.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. Drug deaths are up 380% in BC since 2015 when they took office. So the NDP Liberal Coalition unleashed a horrific experiment in British Columbia, and now the NDP Premier is pleading with the Prime Minister to fix this disaster. But what we're learning is the Toronto minister has decided they're going to double down and they want to expand this failed project into Toronto. After 9 years, this NDP Liberal government's drug policy is failing Canadians, and the Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Instead of expanding this, will they do the right thing and just end this policy today?
Making a point.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, around the world, opioid deaths are taking so many lives. The only way we can rise and meet that moment is with truth and evidence, and not inflaming through spreading false information this situation. I would ask the member opposite, instead of trying to seek opportunity to attack in this House, to work collaboratively on evidence-based solutions that save lives. Like her, like every member of the House, when a life is lost, it rips us all apart, and we have to meet it with truth and honesty and set aside partisanship, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Caribou, Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, overdose is the leading cause of death in my province of British Columbia.
Doherty, huh?
This NDP Liberal Prime Minister's extremist drug policies have turned our neighborhoods into war zones. Hard drugs are being used in playgrounds, coffee shops, and even hospitals. Last week, a drug-addled man lit fires and consumed drugs in front of traumatized kids at the Prince George Aquatic Centre. The RCMP were called numerous times, but their hands are tied because of their insane drug policies. Will the Prime Minister end his deadly drug decriminalization today?
Hear, hear.
What's up, Sky Orange? Good day. Hopefully we haven't missed anybody. We're trying to keep up.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask
Holland is a
clearly,
clown. You're right, Joe.
What evidence are they basing their decisions on? And the answer to that question, everywhere.
Well. Some people are fired up today.
Colleagues. The Honourable Minister has 25 seconds left on the clock.
Mr. Speaker, replacing science with slogans, replacing research and evidence with talking points will not fix this problem, Mr. Speaker. There is not a person in this House who is not ripped apart when we watch somebody lose a loved one to this crisis. But to meet it with partisanship, to meet it with pretend solutions, to do things that have failed in other jurisdictions is a disgrace to those who have lost family members, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Cumberland Colchester.
Speaker, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the crime, chaos, drugs and disorder. After 9 years, this Prime Minister's extremist policy allowing for deadly hard drugs to be used in public spaces such as parks, coffee shops, beaches and hospitals. A leaked memo in BC is now instructing nurses to teach patients how to inject illegal drugs into their intravenous. Jeez. Will the Prime Minister end his deadly drug decriminalization experiment today?
The Honourable Minister of Mental Addictions and Health.
Speaker,
she's got
on
the
this
answers.
side of the House, we are committed to saving lives and making sure people who use drugs don't die alone. We moved forward with a decriminalization pilot project at BC's request and have always maintained it would be rigorously monitored and adjusted as needed. We know a full suite of tools, including harm reduction, are needed. Even the MP from Caribou, Prince George knows it. He said himself, quote, I asked if safe injection sites were helping. They did say that safe injection sites probably do help. Mr. Speaker, every tool, every resource to save lives is what we are committed to.
She said that it's a good idea to inject your IV with drugs. Did you hear what she just said?
This morning, La Presse reported on 5 families of Indian origin crammed into one apartment because of the housing crisis. It's outrageous to see such a thing in Canada, but sadly, this is the reality for thousands of asylum seekers. They arrive here and they realize that they don't even have the right to work to support themselves because the federal government takes 2 years to give them work permits. Then they realize that it now takes Ottawa 38 months to process asylum applications. 38 months, Mr. Speaker. How many more families will have to endure these inhumane conditions before the federal government finally speeds up processing times? The Honourable Minister of Immigration and Citizenship. Well, first, I'd like to correct a mistake the members made. He said it takes 2 years to issue work permits.
What's up,
but in
Cicely?
fact, it's
Good day.
3
How are
months.
you?
We need to be honest and speak the truth on the floor of the House of Commons. Now, listening to the member, I would imagine that he will support our budget, which gives provinces billions of dollars for housing in particular. As for asylum seekers and intake of asylum seekers, I do think that we can do better, but Quebec and Canada will have to work together. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean.
It's tough. It is tough to watch
I think it's longer
sometimes.
than 3 months, Mr. Speaker. Now, these are the same families lining up at overstretched food banks in Parc Extension and elsewhere. They've been living in poverty for years because the federal government is preventing them from working. and they're living in poverty, so they can't even focus on their asylum claims. I would like to quote Franz André from the Comité d'Action des Personnes Sans Statut. He said, "These people experience anxiety every day. This leads to mental health problems. They want an answer, even if it's a no, as soon as possible. Mr. Speaker, could there please be a bit more humanity and fewer bureaucratic delays?" The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Well, over the past few months, we have decreased processing times. We can continue to do even better.
Hello,
I understand
Rose,
from the member that he wants to proceed to regularization, so I expect them to support our legislation to regularize those living in Canada. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Well, I'd like to quote what Quebec's immigration minister said this morning. Quebec is still taking in too many asylum seekers. The federal government needs to distribute them across Canada. Mr. Speaker, on the one hand, Quebec's intake capacity has been exceeded, and on the other hand, the federal immigration department is racking up delays in processing applications. And what's the result of that? Families are plunged into poverty because of the federal government's incompetence when it comes to immigration. These are people, human beings, not numbers. Will the minister do his job? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. That is beyond absurd, Mr. Speaker, but it's so typical of the Bloc to make these ridiculous accusations. Typical Bloc Québécois.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
After 9 years of this Prime Minister, Canadians are skipping meals and food banks are overwhelmed. 83% of Canadians are paying $80 more a month for food than they were just 6 months ago. According to Second Harvest, more than half of the food banks in the Toronto area can't meet demand, and they're putting families on wait lists. Families can't afford to put food on the table, and the crisis is getting worse when the Liberal NDP government increases the carbon tax 23%. Will the Prime Minister reverse his decision to increase the carbon tax past 234 in its original form so Canadians don't have to dumpster dive for their dinner?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
As the member well knows, Bill C-234 is in the hands of the Conservative House Leader. The member should speak to him.
The Honourable Member for Foothills.
This NDP Liberal government isn't worth the cost of food. While Canadians are skipping meal, the ministers who are in charge of lowering food costs for Canadians is rubbing shoulders with Hollywood celebrities and political elites at the most expensive dinner imaginable. He's dining out at the White House on the taxpayer dime. After 9 years of this Prime Minister, he's out to lunch and the ministers are out of touch. Will the Champagne Coalition and Caviar Caucus lower food costs for Canadians and pass 234 in its original form?
Let's get some likes going, guys. If you haven't already, give us a little like if you're enjoying the content.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Good.
Mr. Speaker, 2 weeks ago, we presented our budget to deliver fairness for every generation. Because right now, a nurse or a carpenter can pay taxes at a higher marginal rate than a multimillionaire. That's not fair, and we're changing it. But, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives have said that they are opposed to our budget. And that is because the only thing they know how to do is cut, austerity, and quietly
it's always the same old lines.
Tax breaks to their rich friends.
The Honourable Member from Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Food banks in Canada are being pushed to the brink with high demand and donations not keeping pace. Speaker, after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, that was this morning's headline. Canadian families cannot afford to buy food, and our farmers who grow food face punishment, not progress. No farms means no food. From high cost to empty store shelves, this Prime Minister and his costly carbon tax are not worth the cost. So will the Prime Minister finally axe the carbon tax so our farm families can stay in business and Canadian families aren't forced to use food banks?
Good question. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, our government believes in fairness for every generation, especially younger Canadians. That's why we are investing in building more homes faster. We're investing in making life more affordable with programs like early learning and childcare and dental care. And we're investing in jobs and growth. And we're paying for it by asking those at the top to contribute a little bit more. But the Conservatives are opposed to our plan. The only thing they believe in is austerity and quietly giving tax breaks to their rich friends.
Oh, Lord.
The honourable member from London Fanshawe.
Last week, the Maple revealed the Canadian government is hosting test sessions with an Israeli company, Smart Shooter, whose technology is used to kill Palestinian children. They're even eligible for a prize. Its CEO boasted that this war is good for business. As Palestinians continue to be killed, Canada's support of this company is inhumane and shows a shocking lack of judgment. Why is this government showcasing weapons in Canada that are killing kids?
The Honourable Minister for National Defence.
Speaker, and I would simply remind the member
opposite
that Canada has one of the most rigorous military export regimes in the world, and we are vigilant in ensuring that all military technology being shared with any other foreign country is rigorously meets the standards that have been set for us.
Stumbling and fumbling today. Holy
The
cow.
honourable member from Edmonton, Strathcona.
A rigorous regime. Israeli arms are being tested in Canada, in Alberta. Canadians do not want to be complicit in Netanyahu's crimes against Palestinian children. Canada should not be buying from these companies and should not be selling to the Israeli government. The minister promised this House to issue a notice to exporters on March 18th, 6 weeks ago. Where is the notice to exporters, and when will Canada finally impose a two-way arms embargo?
Hear it. The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our position when it comes to arms export permits is well known, absolutely clear. Now, when it comes to what is happening in the Middle East, we've been clear. The violence must stop. We need a ceasefire now. Hostages must be released, and we need to make sure that humanitarian aid gets into Gaza. And at the end of the day, what we need is a two-state solution where the state of Israel can live side by side in peace and security with a Palestinian state. I've been in contact with my US, UK, and many Arab countries' counterpart over the weekend, working hard on bringing back peace to the Middle East. Thank you.
Jolie's going to bring peace to the Middle East.
The honourable member from Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, our government has shown great success in attracting historical investment in our auto industry. Can the minister highlight the recent investment from Honda and what it means for building our EV supply chain and growing Canadian jobs?
Good question.
The honourable for innovation.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much to my colleague for his leadership and good question. Mr. Speaker, last week we witnessed a $15.7 billion investment by Honda, Mr. Speaker. This is the largest investment in Honda's history. It is the largest investment in our auto sector, Mr. Speaker, and it's one of the largest investment by a private company in this country, Mr. Speaker. This is great news for our workers across the nation. This is great news for our auto sector, Mr. Speaker. This is great news for Canada, Mr. Speaker. Let's celebrate as Canada becomes a hub for green manufacturing in the 21st century.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Journal de Montréal reported this morning that 25% of Quebecers can't even afford a decent standard of living. Even working 50 hours a week isn't enough to avoid living in poverty. That's where we are after 9 years of this government. The statistics are clear, and the Bloc, which claims to promote Quebec's interests, has voted with the Liberals for every budget allocation to support this exorbitant inflationary spending. Does the government and the Bloc have enough courage to admit that they have let Quebecers down and stop their uncontrolled spending?
Have you ever seen the size of champagne? He's like
Mr. Speaker, last week we saw the leader of the opposition once again encourage white supremacists, anarchists, and misogynists. That happens very regularly, and that draws the admiration of those who claim that school shootings didn't happen. And now the leader of the opposition has 30 seconds to speak to this House and to Canadians. Once I've sat down, I ask him to disavow the opinions of these dangerous people. Will he do it? The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Oh, Mr. Speaker, during that time, What about the $54 billion that Canadians and Quebecers have to pay in interest to banks in London and New York because of this government's uncontrolled spending, supported by the Bloc Québécois? Think about it, Mr. Speaker. The Bloc has voted for every budget allocation, and so today we have interest that has to be paid that is the equivalent to federal health transfers to all of the provinces. We could do much more with that money. Will the government end its uncontrolled spending, and will the Bloc stop supporting them? The Honourable Government House Leader.
Have a good day.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Conservatives showed us his true colours last week, and by refusing to disavow these points of view, he's doing it again. I wonder how the Conservative Quebec caucus can support this. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition speaks without conviction and clarity on a matter that should be very, very simple. Mr. Speaker, his silence speaks volumes. This is not leadership. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this government, too many Canadians and Quebecers are living in poverty. The Journal de Montréal says that 25% of Quebecers don't have a livable income. Imagine working 50 hours a week and not having enough money to meet your needs. Despite all of that, the Bloc continues to support the Liberals by voting for budget allocations. My God, it's expensive to vote for the Bloc. Mr. Speaker, when will the government finally listen to us and stop its uncontrolled spending? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for his question. I have a lot of respect for him.
Right?
But he saw
Nobody
in the
cares
recent
for
budget presented
FPC
by
very
the
much.
Minister of Finance that
It's
this
only
is
this
about
big.
intergenerational fairness, giving an opportunity to each generation, Mr. Speaker, investing in the priorities of Quebecers. We're talking about housing. We're talking about the cost of living, but also about growth. I'm sure that my colleagues from Quebec saw that last week we announced a record investment from IBM in Bromont to allow Canada and Quebec to be leaders in semiconductors. It's by being a nation that invests, that's how we're doing it. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, after 9 years under this government,
Hello,
the
Denise.
Prime Minister is
Good
not worth
day.
the cost. The cost of living keeps going up.
Nowhere, ma'am. What's up?
In an article in La Presse, it says that despite the expenses to help those most in need, recent data from Statistics Canada show that they are still experiencing more difficulty in feeding themselves. The Bloc has voted to support $500 billion in spending.
It's funny, Lisa.
When will the Liberals supported by the Bloc stop their uncontrolled spending? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, last time the Conservative leader was in power, he tried to increase the age of retirement to 67. It's the Liberal government that reversed that decision.
Hello, other Lisa. How are you?
We reduced the taxes of the middle class and increased that for the richest 1%. They voted against our plan. Today, we are investing in Canadians thanks to tax on the wealthiest, and they're still against our plan. The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. La Presse revealed this morning that the expansion of the Port of Valleyfield is being torpedoed by the federal government. The Border Services Agency, claiming a lack of resources, is withdrawing the operator's right to handle containers at this port of vital importance to the regional economy. The Mayor of Salaberry de Valleyfield and the Director of Economic Development have both strongly denounced this foolish decision. Will the Minister of Public Safety intervene to ask the agency to continue doing its job instead of undermining the future of the Port of Valleyfield? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, of course, we share the concern of our colleague in the Liberal caucus of Quebec regarding the importance of the Port of Valleyfield. I intend to raise these important issues with the Border Services Agency because we understand the importance for the regional economy and the people of the region. The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. In 2019, the federal government, through the Building Canada Fund, announced over $12 million in funding to the Port of Valleyfield for a wharf expansion. Yet today, the Border Services Agency is pulling out of the Port of Valleyfield. On the one hand, the federal government is funding the port's expansion. On the other, it is sabotaging its development. What is the logic behind this nonsensical and damaging decision? Mr. Speaker, will the minister help me get the agency, the Canada Border Services Agency, to review its decision? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr.
Kenny
Speaker,
Rogers coming to sing a song for us.
In owner, things don't automatically continue. There have to be requests that are presented again. Nothing is automatic, but that being said, we understand the importance of the Port of Valleyfield. My colleague here referenced that, and we will work on that. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, never in the glorious history of our country have we had a government that has spent so much.
This is a long string of French,
$500 billion
guys, I'll admit. This
in
is a
budgetary
long string of
allocations.
French.
The Liberal Party voted in favor. And who else? The Bloc Québécois. If the government can spend without counting the cost, it's thanks to the Bloc Québécois. This is a big centralizing government thanks to the Bloc Québécois. Which minister will stand up to defend the Bloc's position? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, our government understands the importance of making investments in Canadians, in Quebecers. We are doing so, and we are doing it responsibly, in a fiscally responsible manner. We have a AAA credit rating, and the Governor of the Bank of Canada has said that we are respecting the fiscal guardrails. The budget also commits to respecting those. That is what we are doing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from South Shore, St. Margaret's.
Yes, Rick Perkins is one of my favorites to watch.
$52 billion of taxpayer money to subsidize international auto companies. Then the building
Fix his audio, guys. They're
recently condemned
lame
the use of foreign replacement workers at the Stellantis plants. Jobs like forklift driver. Yet contrary to the Liberal claims, foreign replacement workers keep being brought in for jobs that don't require specialty knowledge. The union calls that a slap in the face, and we agree. After 9 years, the Prime Minister is not worth the cost. So how much will Canadian taxpayers pay to employ foreign replacement workers?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, instead of spreading disinformation, Mr. Speaker, this member should be standing with all Canadians in this House and making sure that we maximize jobs for Canadians. That's exactly what we're doing, Mr. Speaker. The investment that he's talking about is going to create more than 2,500 direct jobs at this plant, Mr. Speaker. That's going to be one of the largest battery assembly plant in North America, Mr. Speaker. We should all be proud that Canada now ranks first in the world for the battery ecosystem we've built, Mr. Speaker. This is according to Bloomberg. We're going to keep investing in Canadians. We're going to keep investing in jobs, and we're going to keep investing in the auto industry.
Try to keep your eyes on Freeland just in the background. She's always like, as you know, she's a twitchy.
It's this Liberal minister is spreading disinformation because in committee admitted he hadn't read the contracts. But I've read both, Stellantis and VW. And do you know what's not in them? Any requirement that jobs at these plants be Canadians only. Canadians don't believe this, Prime Minister, and since I've read the contracts, I don't either. The NDP Liberals are hiding the truth. If this Prime Minister has contractual job guarantees, he will have no problem proving me wrong.
That's right.
Will the Liberals release the contracts, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, it's amazing that the member would be against creating jobs in this country, Mr. Speaker, and maximizing jobs. If you read the contract, I guess you should have a lawyer to understand the terms, Mr. Speaker, because it's very simple. The terms are maximizing Canadian jobs, but it gives me an opportunity, Mr. Speaker. We should rejoice. Just last week, we announced and we supported the largest investment in the auto sector in Canada's history. Honda is going to be investing $15.7 billion, Mr. Speaker, in this country. Mr. Speaker, we're attracting record investment. We're going to create jobs, and we're going to fight for every Canadian jobs.
The
Oh, that's awful to hear. Oh my goodness.
Mr.
Rocky
Speaker,
Mountain
this
woman.
government's policies have been focused on promoting diversity, respect, and equality amongst all Canadians. On that side of the House, however, we learned last week that the Leader of the Opposition visited an encampment set up by individuals linked to extreme far-right groups like Diagolon. CSIS says Diagolon encourages and inspires serious violence, yet the Conservative leader is refusing to denounce them or apologize for engaging with them. Can the government please reiterate how we will keep Canadians safe from extreme groups and what our responsibilities are as political leaders?
The Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
Mr. Speaker, while we can appreciate different views and political opinions, what we cannot and should not tolerate is any member of this House indulging in and actively courting extremist far-right groups that espouse anti-Semitic, anti-2S LGBTQI+, and white nationalist ideologies. The Conservative leaders' embrace of, and quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, refusal to denounce Diagolon in this very...
Lord. They're fake. They accuse you of what they are. Like, what kind of a tactic
Colleagues,
is that?
I'm having great difficulty trying to hear the answer from the Honourable Minister.
Take your hand off the button.
Members to please let the Minister finish his statement. The Minister has 20 seconds left on the clock.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader's embrace of and refusal to denounce Diagolon is incredibly alarming. That he will do anything to win speaks volumes to his values, and Mr. Speaker, quite frankly, is sending chills across this country. On this side, we will always defend Canadians and Canadian values.
All fired up. This Liberal cabinet, guys, I'm not kidding, it gets me down. Somebody mentioned Bernie Sanders. I think this Liberal cabinet is far worse than Bernie Sanders.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, young Canadians know that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. 8 in 10 people now regard home ownership as being only for the rich, as they've completely given up on their dream of ever owning a home. So simply, Mr. Speaker, will this government finally listen to Canadians and to our common sense plan to cap spending that brings down inflation and interest rates so that young people can finally afford a home?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, I'll agree insofar as the Conservatives believe that it's essential that we do more to make sure that young people can get into the housing market. But the difference between our side and theirs is they do not have a plan to achieve that reality. Mr. Speaker, the measures that they are putting forward include measures that would raise taxes on home buildings, make it more difficult to build homes in communities, and actually cut funding for homes, for programs that are supporting home building today. We have new measures that create tax-free opportunities for young people to save up for a down payment, new measures that help young people establish a credit score, and new measures that reduce their monthly mortgage costs. We will do what it takes to solve the housing crisis. I wish they'd join us.
He's going to be the guy that solves the housing crisis, the guy that caused our problem with so many
after 9 years of this Prime Minister, car theft in Canada is completely out of control. 2 in 5 Canadians have either had their car stolen or know someone who has. Last week in Victoria, a repeat offender was arrested 3 times in 3 days for stealing cars. The police in Victoria had to put out a statement, and they laid the blame for this on the Liberals' failed Bill C-75. Will this Justice Minister listen to the police and reverse their soft on crime Bill C-75?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I've got a lot of respect for that member. He's my critic. He served on the Justice Committee with me for a number of years. What I don't have respect for is the instructions he gets from his leader on how to vote. When we have legislation in the chamber that deals with, in the fall economic statement, tackling the money laundering and the organized crime links to auto theft, he's instructed to vote against. Before even reading the document that is the budget 2024 and what it contains with respect to addressing auto theft, increasing maximum penalties, dealing with the link between using youth and organized criminality, and tackling more money laundering, he was told to vote against yet again by his leader.
What do you guys think of Ronnie? I'm not a fan.
Mr. Speaker, the Justice Minister's own vehicle was stolen 3 times in the last 3 years. The Liberals are not fixing fixing the problem. Conservatives have
drives.
a private member's bill in the House right now that establishes serious jail time for repeat car thefts. Mr. Speaker, this individual in Victoria was arrested 3 times in 3 days. He pushed a woman out of her car to steal her vehicle. He drove off and caused a collision. It's time in Canada that we crack down on repeat violent auto theft. Conservatives will do it.
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, that member knows that repeat violent offenders are already dealt with by our bail regime. He voted in favour of that. You should also know that when C-75, the very bill...
Speaker's going to step in. Fergus needs to sit down and be
to allow
quiet.
the minister to listen to his question. I'll ask you to settle down. The Honourable Minister from the top.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. That member knows and should know that on the bail reform bill that he actually voted in favor of, it tackles serious violent repeat offenders, which would include those who use serious violence in committing an auto theft. What he should also realize is that the very bill he impugns, Bill C-75, when that was before this chamber in the 42nd Parliament, we promoted an augmentation, an increasing in the penalty that is available for auto theft. He and all of his colleagues voted against. What I would prefer is some collaboration and a bit less hypocrisy.
The Honourable Member from Halifax West.
Mr. Speaker, our government is making historic efforts to solve Canada's housing crisis.
Not proudly
only do we
from
need
Halifax.
to build more homes,
Goodness
we need to build them faster, and Canada must change the way we build those homes. Can the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities tell this House and Canadians the new measures introduced to solve Canada's housing crisis?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Thank the Honourable Member for her question and for her advocacy for housing supports, particularly for the most vulnerable across the city of Halifax. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to share that we have put forward a plan to solve Canada's national housing crisis. It includes new measures that will help make it easier to build more homes by reducing the cost, eliminating the barriers, including freeing up more public land. It includes more measures to help young people save up for a down payment and to reduce their mortgage costs. And it also includes measures to support those who cannot afford to have a roof over their head, including a recent investment of $11 million to build more housing for persons with disabilities and seniors. We're going to continue to make the investments to solve Canada's housing crisis.
The Honourable Member from Courtenay, Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, last week the BC police chiefs told us it is deadly street drugs laced with fentanyl that is killing thousands, not the diversion of safer supply. They clearly advise that preventing people from using drugs in public and preventing toxic drug deaths requires more, not fewer safe consumption sites. BC has listened to the police call for more tools to deal with the public use of illicit substances. When will the Liberals ignore Conservative disinformation, recall the expert task force, and formulate a comprehensive plan to end the toxic drug crisis? When?
The Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Addictions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member for being a collaborative partner in addressing the toxic drug supply and the tragic overdose deaths that are taking over this country from day to day. We're committed to a comprehensive, collaborative, and evidence-based substance policy approach. We appreciate the excellent work of the expert task force on substance use, whose mandate was to provide advice to the government on a renewed Canadian drugs and substance plan. It's important that the actions be informed by independent advice of experts and evidence. I've asked the department to reestablish an expert advisory committee, and work is underway.
The Honourable Member from Spadina, Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians want to know how a deportation order, one upheld by a federal court, of a person convicted of 5 criminal charges and who didn't like to attend much school despite being in Canada on a student visa, somehow still managed to get ministerial intervention to stop his removal.
I do have more videos
Did the Minister of
to show
Immigration intend to make a mockery of our legal and immigration systems?
There's more
or was
fun
this
stuff to
intervention
come.
guided by the hope of getting a few more votes for his party in BC?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
As the member well knows, these are not matters that we talk about publicly, much less on the floor of the House of Commons. Thank you.
Miller, quick and easy.
Colleagues, following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence in memory of Jean-Pierre Ferland. À la suite des discussions entre les
Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand.
So we're getting into there, and we're dropping back to this. So yes, we do have some more videos to show, just a couple things to wind it down. And in case there's anybody that I missed that wanted a shout out or whatever, now is the time. Let me know, let me and Kirk know that we didn't get you. We're trying very hard. It moves fast, it's busy doing this. No excuses, but we are trying to say hello to everyone. So just quickly before we drop into this piece on with Stephanie Kusi, very interesting. That's it. Just in case we didn't catch anybody, what's up, Salty Berry Apothecary? How are you? Harry Tank, good day. What's up, sir? And hopefully we've caught everyone. But in case we didn't, we'll catch you next time. We are trying here. Let's drop into this video. Stephanie
Four
Kusi
lines of inquiry, the first one being competitive procurement practices leading to contracts awarded to McKinsey. Yet 78% of McKinsey contracts were sole sourced, and 59% of the contracts you reviewed were sole source contracts specifically under a benchmarking service deal catered towards McKinsey, correct?
Can't validate the statistics, but yes, it sounds accurate.
Thank you. So this specific benchmarking solution was originally valued at $47 million, but then increased to $48.8 million. And only one contract of the 19 provided any justification as to why McKinsey was the only company able to perform the necessary services. So this means $43 million was paid to McKinsey without the proper documentation, a theme we've seen repeatedly, unfortunately, across this government. Do you believe it's because the departments favor McKinsey as a company in comparison to others that perform similar services?
So, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. I think in totality what we concluded, in addition to the NMSO, which you well described, we found instances of favoritism towards McKinsey. Now, the one counter to that is in the NMSO creation, as we reported in the report, there was also the creation of 4 other national master standing offers with other entities, not McKinsey.
So then why do you think it was that departments were changing their requirements to allow for McKinsey to bid on contracts that they were not originally eligible for?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. So again, where there's a lack of documentation, we simply allege the facts, right? And I don't know if you recall, but at my previous testimony, I started to talk about negative inferences. At what point do we make negative inferences associated with the lack of documentation? And this report starts that trend of negative inferences where we allege the facts, but ultimately came to a conclusion that in some, there was favoritism towards McKinsey.
And what evidence did you find that encouraged this favoritism from government departments?
Well, so you've cited 2 examples. So one was in the change of procurement strategy. What we saw was there was a procurement strategy being contemplated, and then it was only through the realization, whether it be directly with McKinsey or through the contracting authority, that they would not be qualified to participate in the process, and therefore there was a reconsideration of the process. Now, could there have been additional factors in addition to that fact alone? Absolutely. And we're not discounting that, but we're simply saying that did happen, and the contracts were in fact awarded to McKinsey. And I just will say one more thing. In addition, we found a lack of documentation. So other ways that we could kind of walk back our findings were if we saw documentation which would explain why some of these decisions were taken. And you'll note in the report there was a lack of information explaining why there was a change of these decisions or procurement strategies.
Interesting, very similar to the Auditor General's findings around ArriveCAN, that she was unable to actually determine the actual cost of ArriveCAN as a result of missing documentation.
All right, guys, so this is the last piece that we're going to do. I made this video earlier today. I think it's super interesting. It's about Charlie Angus and this crazy bill that he's putting forward. And so we are going to go out on this video. So when this video is over, that will be the show. And That's it. Anyways, so I've had a blast today. Anyways, we're going to watch this one and that will wrap it up. But I like this video. It's pretty good.
Mold-filled homes, sheds, and even tents on a tiny plot of land. This is because the feds and Doug Ford refused to transfer land so they can build the homes they need. The Liberals would rather protect the land interests of the mining giant De Beers, a corporation that made $21 million from the sale of a single diamond in Attawapiskat. They're putting the interests of De Beers ahead of people who desperately need safe homes. When will the Liberals stop stalling and give the land back to the Cree of Attawapiskat? Good question.
And what's up? Just Ehren right here at Question Period Canada. How y'all doing? You guys recognize Charlie Angus from the introduction there? He seems harmless enough. Well. Andrew Scheer has another video that we're going to take a peek at that's explaining that Charlie Angus is up to no good. He's pushing through this new bill that is just ludicrous, guys. It's scary what's going on in our country. Andrew Scheer people are on it right here. Let's take a peek. He's an MP from Saskatchewan. Been in the House of Parliament since 2004. He's pretty entertaining. His videos are fun. This is a bit scary. Let's check it out.
If the radical left in this country has their way, then this video will
What's up,
be
Grimes?
illegal.
What's up, Cuma
because of
Bound?
what I'm
How are you
about to
guys?
say. The oil and gas sector provides jobs and employment for thousands of Canadians, including First Nations communities. That right there will land me in jail if the NDP have their way. Sound insane? Well, you're not wrong. But the NDP actually have a plan to jail people who speak positively about the energy sector. Let's get into this because this isn't just silly or ridiculous, it's actually terrifying. This is Bill C-372. This comes from NDP Member of Parliament Charlie Angus. He is a veteran and a senior member of Jagmeet Singh's NDP team. You might remember him from some of these vile tweets he's put out. Or who can forget this incredible performance?
We're making the change, and don't let them tell you it can't be done. When the night is dark, it'll always be the dawn.
Now this bill prohibits the promotion of fossil fuels. It even carries big fines and jail time for people who say certain positive things about the energy sector. I'm not paraphrasing here or putting words in Charlie Angus's mouth. I'm reading directly from the bill. It says it is prohibited for a person to promote a fossil fuel in a manner that states or suggests that the fossil fuel, its production or its emissions are less harmful than other fossil fuels. What does that mean? If I were to tell you that natural gas emits fewer greenhouse gases than, say, coal, off to jail I go. It goes on. It's prohibited to promote fossil fuels in a manner that states or suggests that a fossil fuel would lead to positive outcomes in relation to the environment, the health of Canadians, reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, or the Canadian economy. If I were to say that, for example, the oil and gas sector creates jobs for thousands of Canadians, or that First Nations groups want to develop their natural resources, including oil and gas, to help bring prosperity for their people, and that would be a step towards reconciliation, off to jail I go. That's right. Charlie Angus and the NDP and the radical left in this country want to make it illegal to debate ideas. So in this video, I've already said positive things about Canadian oil and gas. I've already talked about the benefits it brings to Indigenous communities and workers across the country. So I would be in violation of this act. What could I face should this become law? Well, on conviction, I could be subject to a fine of up to $1 million, or I could go to prison for up to 2 years. That's what the NDP are talking about, sending people to prison for up to 2 years for saying positive things about Canada's oil and gas sector. Insane. You might think it's just a throwaway bill from an obscure member of parliament that you've never heard about. But trust me, Charlie Angus is a major player in the NDP, and the NDP is is a coalition partner with Justin Trudeau. This is a big deal, and it is a sign of things to come. You see, this is a tactic of the far left. They come up with these types of ideas, and at first they're kind of laughed at. Nobody takes it seriously, but they start to propose more and more of these types of things, and the whole conversation shifts until one day they're actually doing what Justin Trudeau's doing, passing laws to control the internet and passing laws to restrict our freedoms and subsidizing media outlets that are friendly to him and punishing those that aren't. Now, words like authoritarian and fascist get thrown around a lot these days, but this is the definition of totalitarian government. When the government can control what you can say, how you can debate ideas, that is horrifying. You don't have to go too far back in our history to find examples of governments that made it illegal to debate ideas in order to retain their grip on power or to advance their agenda over the objections of their people. Dictators do this all the time. Fidel Castro put people in jail for saying positive things about capitalism. Soviet dictators did the same thing, shipping people off to the gulag if they complained about the communist agenda. This is a tactic of socialist and authoritarian politicians throughout time and across the world. When they lose arguments, they make it illegal to debate them. They literally make ideas or viewpoints banned. And that's what this bill will do. This bill will send people to jail for promoting the idea that certain forms of oil and gas are better for the environment than other, and that the energy sector provides such a benefit to the Canadian economy. That is the tactic of the radical left. Literally, they can't win debates on their own merits, so they will put other people in jail for opposing them. Don't forget, this is part of an agenda. Justin Trudeau has already started to take away your rights to free speech. He's got his Bill C-11, a restriction on free speech, and other bills designed to give him control over the internet, what you can see and post online. He bought off the media outlets across this country, subsidizing newspapers and stacking boards to determine which outlets get government money and which ones don't. This is a slow but sure erosion of your ability, of our ability as Canadians to discuss things freely, to debate things. That's the only way that good ideas emerge from the pack of awful ideas, when they're tested and debated and they hold up to scrutiny. And the NDP and Liberals want to do away with all that so that nobody can question their extreme agenda. This is why this matters. So, if I'm going to find myself offside with the far left's new bill to restrict what you can say about the energy
Check this
sector,
out, guys.
and if
He's
I'm going to
got
be
balls.
subject to fines and imprisonment, I might as well earn it. Clean
Look
and
what he's
ethical
gonna do.
Canadian natural gas is better for the environment than coal. The oil and gas industry provide jobs for thousands of Canadians in every part of this country. First Nations communities benefit from investment, drilling, exploration, and exportation of clean and ethical oil and gas. Every Canadian is better off thanks to our energy sector. There you go. I've just earned myself a few years in prison and maybe a couple $1 million worth of fines.
What?
For saying something that is true. Prison used to be the place we sent people who did things like steal cars or commit violent assaults. Now, if the far left in this country get their way, it's going to be where the government sends people who say the truth.
Oh, my loving family. Nothing's changed.
Idly ho, slaverinos.
Oakley dokley. Hey, what the hell is that geek Flanders doing on TV?
Oh, I see by the big board we got a negative Nelly in Sector 2. I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask the whole family to kind of freeze and prepare for reading education.
Don't you remember, Dad? Flanders is the unquestioned lord and master of the world.
There used to be an important principle in Western societies that the truth was always a defense. But that won't be the case if the radical far left in this country have their way. Conservatives are going to fight this bill, but stay vigilant and don't believe that the NDP will protect your rights and liberties, because they won't.
So what do you think, gang? Is Charlie Angus up to no good? It kind of sounds like it right there with that bill. It sounds ludicrous. You get... So I guess I can do my own wrap-up on my live, because I did that video this morning. How ludicrous is that proposed bill? That you can't talk about your opinions about different types of fossil fuel, or you get heavily fined and serious jail time. Sounds pretty... I don't know what this Liberal cabinet is up to. They're up to something that, again, I'm not against climate change or working with that, but the way that they're handling it is a mess. And having it so that Canadians just can't share their opinions, that's not what I'm interested in. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm a legitimate, good old Canadian boy from next door. And they're saying that we can't talk about the issues that are going... Anyway, it was a very fun show. I'm glad that the boys and girls are back in town because the House of Commons, the question period certainly does add quite a bit to Canadian politics, makes it interesting. My name's Ehren. This is Question Period Canada. Thank you all for coming and watching. Hello, Sheila. Hello, Grimes. I think I missed you there earlier. Good to see you guys and catch you late. I hope you guys like a few of the changes in the format. We'll be doing that, a couple of videos before the question period, a couple of videos after. We can talk to each other in between to make sure that we get a chance to say hello and not be speaking over the politicians very often. And that is it. It's been fun. Like, share, subscribe, get notified, all that fun stuff. We're going to wrap this one up. And you're welcome, everybody. Anybody that's new to the chat room, come back tomorrow. We'll be here. Same time, same place, same format with some interesting videos, the question period, and a couple more other videos to send you off. That's it, guys. Everybody here, have a great afternoon. I'm Ehren, Question Period Canada. We'll catch you tomorrow. Thank you all for tuning in. It's been fun. We're going to wrap up.